People are saying that Song Daeun is pregnant with Jimin's baby. People are saying that Jimin is refusing to speak up about something that has made him uncomfortable. And then we have people discussing the new fate of HYBE's new music. Say Dumplings, this is Dave Disci. Let's get into it. There's been a lot of ongoing discourse online about the type of music that HYBE makes, specifically if they make music that seems a little bit more copy and paste lately versus original content. People look back at some of the old types of K-pop music that exists, and it was typically very bubblegum aesthetic, as well as really aggressive dancing, and then a lot more lyrics that don't exactly make a lot of sense. This obviously happened as a lot of Korean writers and producers would include 1 or 2 English words that would sound nice to make a song seem more trendy, and of course this was back in the day where artists were not forced to learn English as they are now. When HYBE started to debut their female groups, there was this ongoing trend because everyone was trying to copy what HYBE had done, and they wanted all their artists to sound kind of like early 2000s, and I think we are coming to the tail end of that trend. I think the whole Y2K thing is coming to an end, and it's slowly starting to actually, funny enough, go into the era right after that. So it seems like we're going kind of to revisit periods. Specifically, a lot of people were talking about Momoland and their new song, Rodeo, resembling different time periods, specifically the time period after Y2K. And I actually think that that makes people feel the artist is more trendy and relevant and is doing something innovative, as they are now going to be on the forefront of that new trend while the old trend is slowly dying out. So while not everyone has abandoned that old trend yet, hopping on a new trend right at that point is going to make you feel like you're ahead of the curve and very fresh. This is tough, right? Because we know that BTS has been working on new music, but because it takes a while for artists to make new music, they might be stuck in this phase where they have to try to figure out what's going to be trendy like 3 months from now, or whenever the album's coming out. I don't know why I said 3 months, but whenever that time period is, they have to make sure that it's relevant to that time period. And when an artist gets it completely wrong and the album is not trendy, which it can still do well if it's not trendy, but typically artists, especially in pop, like to make their music trendy. And if it misses that mark, it becomes really tough, and they have to spend the next year or several months promoting an album that quite frankly isn't going to do well because it isn't what people want to hear right now. So I'm hoping that they kind of figure out that discourse and maybe hop on it. One of the bigger issues with bigger artists and with bigger companies too, like in the corporate world, they struggle with hopping on trends fast enough. And this is why small companies can tend to grow a lot faster than the bigger ones. And the bigger ones can kind of stay pretty stagnant. It's because there is all of this politics that get involved to release something, because a release can be really big. But if you're a really small company, let's say, and you find out a specific style or thing that's trending right now, you can just hop in the studio and release it tomorrow and not have to answer to anybody, right? So I just wanted to talk about this because I think this is going to be a new era and it's going to be something that's pretty interesting. I wonder if HYBE will jump on it or if they'll try to carve out their own path, maybe try to supersede the current trend and try to jump on the next era, right? And it being a predictable thing where it's going from one era to the other and kind of repeating what history had done makes it really good for commercial pop music, because pop music has to be commercial. It has to be predictable for it to eventually be something that these corporations are going to want to try to make money off of. I don't know if that makes sense. But pop music is really difficult to define because any genre can be pop, like country music was once pop. So we're not talking about pop as a specific genre like that, but pop music really, I think, comes down to, by definition, music that's able to be marketed and sold to a big demographic. So it's not a niche thing. So with that said, the music has to be commercial and it has to be music that's trendy and the success can be predictable. It has to be music that executives are aware of. It has to be something that they can mass produce. By the way, people often think when I say this or when people say stuff like this is a downgrade or discard the work and the cultural impact of pop music. Not at all. First off, I can say this, I'll tell you firsthand, I am the biggest pop music fan. I quite literally like whatever's trending, and that's okay. You can like that too. There's no shame in that. No one should put you down for that. As some people are shifting into country music, like that's the trend right now. I find myself more into that, and that's great. There was also a moment recently in which people were talking about Jimin believed to be uncomfortable. Previously, not too long ago, this is when Jimin had pink hair. He was believed to have done an interview with this guy and they were all sitting on a couch together, and people said that Jimin seemed really uncomfortable because the reporter kept inching closer and closer to Jimin. Keep in mind, this was the time in which Jimin was just like the biggest he had ever been, and a lot of people were really obsessed about him every time he did anything in America. Specifically, all of Jimin fans would go crazy, and of course new people would even see him and then become fans of the group. So he was likely the one that everyone was after. And around this time, he also had a bunch of stalkers, so things like this obviously would make him uncomfortable. At least that's what people believe. Of course, I don't believe that this particular interviewer or reporter had the intention of doing something like that, right? But maybe it came across that way. But we don't know, right? Because Jimin has never spoken up about it or said anything. However, more recently, that interviewer did another interview with BTS, and people were making the assumption of if the boys were in fact really uncomfortable. And if they were, would they have agreed to do another interview with the same reporter? And yes, I believe so, because if the interviewer in fact didn't actually do anything, like didn't actually touch anyone, didn't actually do anything, then likely they would still go and meet them. This is like if a coworker you dislike, or maybe you don't have a reason to really dislike them, you just think that they're annoying, but honestly that's not really a good enough reason. You're still friendly with them, but maybe you just don't like them. So it's kind of like that same thing, and it's not to say that BTS in fact does not like this reporter, because we do not know that, but it is saying that we don't know what's going on, and even if they do dislike him, they can still do an interview. Clips are showing moments during a more recent interview where all of the boys were kind of having no reaction to anything the interviewer said before these moments were spliced up and edited, so we don't know. People also said that V took off the foam or the spit catcher on the mic to put on his nose and pointed to it to resemble that he thinks the interviewer is a clown. This, of course, is definitely a little bit more of a stretch, because I don't even know that V would be outwardly this disrespectful to someone. What I see a lot of people saying is that the BTS boys were not happy with the reporter and then are bullying him. But do you believe that the boys would do that? I believe they're great people and would never bully someone. People are saying that Jimin isn't speaking up and this is him being upset, but again, this is all speculation, and it's so funny what the community will go off of based on speculation and then bully someone for it. The same community that BTS has actively preached to be kind and to show love. Now we're going to get into something that maybe needs a little bit more of a trigger warning, because we're going to be talking about abortion and or claims of. The recent rumors with Jimin and Song being in a relationship has just opened up the gates to get insults from all directions. And people are insulting both of them in any way possible. I mean, you can imagine two people who are believed to be dating, how many scandals could arise from this and how much speculation could arise from this, right? We have people who make up stories about Jimin being the bad guy in the relationship. And I say that to say something a little bit more darker, but not wanting to say it outright. But then something that of course would make the community go crazy is if Song had a baby, specifically Jimin's baby. That would imply, one, that obviously they had slept together, but then two, that Jimin was potentially looking to have a kid, or on the other hand, if an abortion happened, then it makes Jimin look like he didn't use protection even though he should have. And if those people who believe that an abortion is killing a baby, then they would say that Jimin did that. So there were rumors that were speculating this, but of course, there isn't even confirmation or any evidence that exists online that Song was ever even pregnant, but also the fact that if she was pregnant and she did go through this procedure, this would have been a situation a long time ago. And that's if they were ever together to begin with. But we don't still fully have that confirmation. But if we just wanted to choose to believe the statement that has come out to say that they both did have mutual affection towards each other, that does not imply that they were in a relationship together or did anything other than them just liking each other. It doesn't mean that they slept together. It doesn't mean anything. It could just potentially mean that they went on a date or two and decided this wasn't a match. Let's not continue, right? Because from the alleged video that we saw that allegedly Song posted, they are friendly. And I believe that's a pretty recent video, but I don't know. And that's not to say that anything happened. I'm just listing all the possibilities of things and what people are talking about. This is such a dark thought to have, and of course it's one to attempt to make Jimin look bad and like a bad guy, because he would of course be the one hurting Song over a mistake because he didn't want to have a baby, right? And of course I don't have to explain why this definitely makes him look bad. And I think people who are making these accusations, one, of course, needs to have a mental evaluation as to why they feel they need to do this, but two, I think should realize exactly what they are saying and how bad it is. Not even just targeting a celebrity, but how triggering it could be for anyone who may have gone through that procedure and now is in the community reading comments like this, because then Jimin's name gets associated with that triggering thing to some people. Because I'm sure people who have gone through it, it is triggering, but they don't care, right? These haters don't care, they just want attention. Let me know what you think, let me know your thoughts. Make sure you check out Patreon. I'll leave a link at the top of the description. Thank you so much for this lovely comment right here. Love you, bye.